I mean, this Senate hearing was just the most remarkable thing I've seen in American politics. I've never seen a hearing that is so bad-tempered, that feels so much like an actual war of words.
Yeah, we're going to be unpacking the politics of the day right now, from Burnham's devolution drive to Labour's newest MPs, and because it's, well, relatively silly season, mind you, there's an awful lot to discuss. We're going to touch on the new summer holiday divide. With me in studio is City AM's opinions and feature editor, Alys Denby. Welcome, Alys.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Great to see you. And also on the line is host of the Times Story, great podcast, Manveen Rana. Manveen, always lovely to see you. Thanks for being with us too.
No, it's a pleasure.
Okay, so let's kick off, will we? We've had a significant announcement from President Donald Trump on Gaza. He says his board of peace has reached a deal to disarm Hamas and other Palestinian factions. It's understood these groups have agreed to a document outlining a sequential plan for transfers of powers, Israeli withdrawal and laying down the arms. It's massive. Manveen, talk to us a little bit about the significance of this.
Well, obviously, this is the first time we've seen Hamas actually talk about disarming. You know, that's always been the hardest problem in getting any kind of a deal done. It does feel like they've just managed to do the impossible. The problem is, have they? Yeah. It probably is impossible. And, you know, the problem with Donald Trump is he's great on announcements, but he's not the sort of person who does deals by dotting the I's and you know, checking the T's. He announces these things as a vibe shift rather than as something that's been thought through. And already today we've had the Israelis coming out saying they will not sign up to this deal. And the way the deal is sequenced, it means that Hamas won't actually sort of put down their weapons until certain things happen, including the Israelis sort of moving back within Gaza, leaving certain areas and allowing aid to flow through. And if they haven't agreed to do that, then nothing actually changes. Yeah,
as we say, in circumstances like this, Alys, the devil is in the detail.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'll believe it when I see it. And Manveen's absolutely right. Trump's always announcing things. I mean, you look at how the negotiations with Iran, they just seem to be stuck in an intractable conflict there. But you know, fair play. If Hamas does disarm, that would be a great thing for that region, a historic step. And we can all, I guess, just hope.
Yeah, and that is the thing, Manveen, even reading the coverage this morning in the Times, there was a bit of hope, like Alys says, where you're kind of going, wouldn't it be extraordinary if this happened? I mean, I was even thinking with my cynical hack's head on me, wouldn't it be lovely if this was actually potentially a good news story?
I mean, look, it would be great. It really would. There's nothing quite like Donald Trump's own tweets, though, to make you think, is this real? You know, he was the one who heralded, you know, the greatest peace in like 3,000 years, I think he said, around a deal similar to this. And since then, we haven't really seen very much of a ceasefire. There's been more than 1,000 people killed in Gaza, and we've just stopped looking. I sort of think also this is a huge breakthrough in that we've never had Hamas actually talking about disarming before. Yeah. But are they just doing something which is quite political? So, you know, in Israel, Netanyahu faces an election which he is going to really struggle to win. One of the reasons he's struggling is because a lot of Israelis think he has lost American support, you know, their greatest ally, their security guarantor in many ways. And for the first time in generations, America seems to be stepping back across the political spectrum. There was a very awkward meeting in the White House earlier this week. So, you know, over the last few weeks, Netanyahu had said he was going to the White House to meet Donald Trump. They'd had people there already trying to make the meeting happen. He'd announced it, and it couldn't happen because Donald Trump kept saying no. And then the funeral of Lindsey Graham provided an excuse. So Netanyahu turns up in Washington, clearly has a very difficult meeting because Donald Trump, even in the run-up to it, was saying he doesn't need Netanyahu's intelligence to work out what to do in Iran. You know, he's clearly distancing himself. Netanyahu afterwards came out saying this was the greatest meeting they'd ever had with any American president. I'm not sure many people in Israel really believe that. And now Donald Trump has already said that if Israel doesn't get on side with this deal, he will be very disappointed, which I think will show itself in many of the statements we'll see in the next few days, which will make life even harder for Netanyahu. And yet, if he agrees to this deal, again, he'll lose a lot of his constituency. So they've kind of got him. It's a situation of checkmate for him. He's kind of stuck either way. And I think Hamas have probably actually played quite a political game in making his life very difficult in the run-up to a tough election. Fascinating
story and a fascinating few weeks ahead. We go across the Atlantic now to talk about Anthony Fauci. Do you remember Anthony Fauci, he was the man in charge of obviously keeping an eye on the COVID situation and had been involved in so many initiatives in the medical world in America from Ronald Reagan and beyond. But a bizarre story this week. It really caught my eye. He's the former US top US health official, and he's been refusing to answer questions at a very tense US Senate hearing on COVID-19. It's been this extraordinary story. A lot of rage towards him at how the pandemic was handled. Have a listen to Ohio Republican Bernie Moreno.
It is a total disgrace what you did to this country. And if my Democrat colleagues are standing there defending you, I hope the voters of the United States of America watch the clips of every one of you doting on a guy who was more interested in being a celebrity than saving American people.
Alys, he really got all guns there during the week. What happened?
I really think this shows you how degraded American democracy has become. Anthony Fauci is the sort of America's Patrick Vallance, right? And if you imagine a bunch of MPs shouting at Patrick Vallance in this way.
Yeah, they were effing and blinding as well.
I think it's appalling. And I think in Britain, rightly, there's a lot of anger about the way COVID was handled, but all that anger is correctly directed at our politicians, not at public officials who I think were probably just trying to, didn't expect to be catapulted into these terrible circumstances. It's a very, very strange story. As far as I can tell, there's this particular Senator, Rand Paul, is it? Who believes that Anthony Fauci covered up that COVID came out of a lab rather than a wet market. Now, that might be true, but it's also a kind of crazy conspiracy theory at the same time. Now it seems that Anthony Fauci is the kind of the locus of all of this mad anger.
And I think Rand Paul managed to get his hands, I don't know how, on Anthony Fauci's private diaries.
Yeah.
And they appear to be quite peculiar. We'll talk about that in a second. But Manveen, I was broadcasting in the middle of COVID, and people then took a stance on those broadcasting, even as well as being political and as well as being health professionals on this issue, because it became weaponized and politicized, didn't it?
Yeah, very much so. And Anthony Fauci, he's kind of been drawing an awful lot of this horrific reaction from Americans for a really long time. You're right. It's a sign of how polarized America is. And during that period when, it was a great time for culture wars to grow. That's when we sort of had Black Lives Matter. We had the backlash against that. All of this was happening because people were cooped up in the pandemic and could only focus on the things that they get angry about. And the pandemic itself was one of those. Anthony Fauci received so many death threats. He had to have security around the clock because he was under such a threat. And ever since Donald Trump has come back, that has been taken away. And now we've seen this. This Senate hearing was just the most remarkable thing I've seen in American politics. I've never seen a hearing that is so bad-tempered, that feels so much like an actual war of words.
Yeah.
And you think for somebody who's already received so many death threats, for people watching that, there's been a whole bunch of these sort of quite right-wing podcasts afterwards saying this is exactly what we always said. He's the man single-handedly covering up what happened in COVID. Donald Trump has said he's protecting China, which, does make him seem like a traitor to the country. I would, if I was Anthony Fauci, I'd be very worried, especially since he now has no security. I think it's an appalling situation.
It is. It was like they were looking at him as if he was the virus, as if it was his fault. It was so visceral and so personal, and ad hominem attacks to his character and everything else. Between the diaries appear to show that he was a man who was a little bit vain. Fair enough. We all suffer from a bit of that. Some of us too, more than others. But where he was saying, Barbara Streisand was on the phone to me today, and Julia Roberts was on the phone. So that happened, and he was obviously delighted about that. But that does not make him a baddie. And he's, of course, his lawyers are saying he's on solid ground after he was threatened with prosecution for refusing to answer questions, but he's just worried that he's going to trip himself up. But anyway, it does sum up the polar nature of American politics as we go. Let's talk about this brilliant moment this week. This is the Canadian politician Bill Oliver, who was reading his speech. I won't tell you what happened, because if you listen carefully, you'll realise that he should have read it before he was reading it on first sight. Take note, everybody.
Madam Speaker, another concern relates to expectations. One of the dangers associated with creating advocacy offices is that citizens often develop expectations that exceed the powers actually granted to those offices. Here's a more natural flowing version of that section that reads like a legislative speech rather than a series of short points.
Now, we all know his advisor's jaw hit the floor there. What did we just hear happen there, Alys?
Yeah, he's reading out an AI prompt. He's just reading it out. I think this is appalling that that a legislator would use an AI to write their speeches. I think it tells us a lot of things, both how quickly AI has seeped into every aspect of our life, how lazy it's made people, and just, I think, degraded human thought. that if you think you can just outsource something as important as write a speech that you're going to make in a parliament to a robot.
It's offensive to your voters, to your colleagues.
Deeply, deeply offensive. And I experienced this myself as an editor, because I get submissions from journalists and from PRs that are clearly written by AI.
Yeah.
It's an insult to our readers. It's an insult to me as an editor to think that I wouldn't be able to recognise it, or that if you submit poorly written copy that I can't fix it. That's my job. And I just worry that this is going to make people lazy and make people stop thinking.
Well, you've said something really reassuring to me there, which is that you can spot it. I think this is, to me, I don't know if I'd spotted it so quickly, but I love that the fact that they had to pulp a book last year or earlier this year because readers said, hang on, that's slop.
Yeah.
You are giving us slop, and the publishers had to throw it in the bin. And you're saying, as somebody who takes in copy, you can spot. How do you spot it?
Short sentences, rule of three, just a very overall blandness. I mean, it's robotic because it's written by a robot. But we also have a backup because there is AI checkers that you can use, ironically, which run on AI, but that can...
Who watches the watchers?
Yeah. Well, sometimes I run my own writing through it to make sure it's human.
Wow.
But yeah, like there's too much slop. People need to get back to, human created content.
Manveen, tell me how horrified you are by all of this.
Oh, I mean, it's important. It's very funny.
Yeah.
It's great to actually have a moment in Parliament that everybody can stop and laugh at, but for the worst reason, because it's degrading democracy too. It reminded me of an interview I did years ago with somebody who was recounting their school days, and they clearly cheated on some big assignment by copying somebody else's answer, only their handwriting was smaller than the other person's. So when they've written at the bottom of the page, PTO, as in please turn over, this person had it halfay through the page.
Oh, very good. Very good. Oh, that's
how it was taken out.
That's
so I love that the same thing is still happening.
Yeah.
But I think Alys is right. I think we're starting to spot slop. We are aware that we're just being fed a lot of AI stuff. I was at the Cannes Lions, the big advertising creativity festival, and last summer the story there everybody was telling was that the entire advertising and marketing industry was over. It was going to be replaced by AI in a heartbeat that could produce your entire ad campaign in minutes and would be so much cheaper and so more creative, and it would be just as slick. And this year that had completely reversed because they've seen some of that coming, and they've now decided that everybody recognizes that it's AI slop. So this year, all the chat there was about how it'll be what makes things human.
Yes.
And it'll be needing people on your team that can humanize your ad and make it look like it is something that has come from a person with actual feelings and can somehow provide a human touch. That's what now is distinctive, and I think that's such an interesting shift.
Love that. Yeah.
I've heard of people, journalists, deliberately inserting spelling mistakes and so on into their copy to make it seem more human.
I couldn't handle that as a reader, I have to say. I'm glad for your humanity, but please correct them. That's the spelling mistake. But it's an extraordinary story, and here's hoping. I was delighted to hear that people with a humanities degree will be more employable as a result, because they bring soul to what is now an increasingly computerised world.
Well, of course, we've got an English grad Prime Minister, so that's a job for one humanities grad there.
Yeah, that's a good news story. Okay, before we say goodbye, let's just talk briefly about holidays and we're into August. We're into August now, is it? Close enough. So we're very much in summer holiday season. The Times asked today, are you a hardcore holidayer? I don't know if you had a chance to read this article, but are you a hardcore holiday maker or a summer slob? Alys, can you quickly tell us what the difference is? Or...
So a hardcore holiday maker is someone who does lots of exercise, gets up early on their holiday, like Jennifer Aniston was seen doing a plank on a yacht. Whereas a holiday slob is someone who, just like me, marinades in rosé and falls asleep on a lounger.
Yes.
But what I enjoyed about this article is it's one of the, like when you had those headlines, which is kind of a question, but you know that the answer is no. It was like nobody reading this is going to say they're the hardcore holidayer because that's not relaxing.
No one wants to. Manveen, I can't imagine you'd be a slob job in any shape or form. So
you're very sweet.
You're up at the crack of dawn doing a 10K before breakfast.
Oh, I mean, I read that and I thought, Christ, she's planking on holiday, and I don't manage to do that on an ordinary. I don't do that when I'm here. So I'm now sort of feeling very slob-like. I did sort of think there's a middle way though. I feel like I'm the middle way, which is, I will take walking shoes with me, and I love walking around without sort of great purpose necessarily.
Yeah.
Just that sort of joy of wandering around a city and soaking it up. So the definition of a slob versus somebody who's a hardcore holiday person is apparently the slob only does exercise if there's definitely the promise of a restaurant or a drink at the end of it. I think I do usually stumble upon both, but I just sort of set out for long walks basically. I think that's the only form of exercise.
I love that. We're both nodding, are we, on that, Alys? I think that sounds like a good policy. Third way holiday making. Yeah, it's very Blairite, very Clintonite. We'll take that. That's a nice way to end our chat. Manveen Rana, thank you. Alys Denby, lovely to see you. Thank you also for coming in to see us today.